Stardust there.
It's a great song, isn't it? It's 18 minutes past 9. Good morning to you. It's BBC London 94.9 with Tim Arthur and Harriet Scott in for Simon Lederman and Joe Good this morning. We're having a Bowie fest, aren't we?
We are.
Morning. Every song
has been a Bowie song.
Apart from the Eddie song.
Yeah, apart from the Eddie song.
But every other one has been a Bowie song. We're celebrating Bowie. He's our featured artist this morning. Now, pianist Clifford Slapper is a highly respected musician who's played with some of the best. He has recently had his first book published about Mike Garson, who is David Bowie's long-term pianist and most prolific band member. And he's played on 19 of Bowie's albums. And Clifford joins us now. Good morning to you.
Hi.
I'm distracting myself because I keep flitting between Bowie and Bowie. I'm annoying myself now.
I think it's Bowie.
Yeah.
I think everybody does.
I think it's the true fans that are
consensus.
saying it's Bowie.
Yep.
Where did Bowie come from?
Who knows?
Me saying it badly. It's not just me.
So it's Bowie. So this book, I mean, looks amazing. What was your fascination with Mike Garson?
It started at quite a young age. When I was about 11 years old, I went out and bought the first album that I'd ever bought, which was Aladdin Sane, and was just completely transfixed by it, but particularly by the piano on it, as well as Bowie's wonderful voice and songs. I was going to piano lessons at the time, and this completely changed how I saw the idea of playing the piano, because what Mike Garson showed you could do with the piano was quite spectacular, especially on that album.
And did you try, I mean, at that early age, did you try and copy him? I mean, was it kind of that inspired where you went, how does he actually do that?
I think I did. He showed a kind of imaginative approach where the chord structures that you work within were just a starting point for him. He was very much from the sort of avant-garde background where he's playing outside the box, and that's always been Mike Garson's way. And also he's really a master of improvisation. So, you know, this saying about living in the moment, he actually plays in the moment. So from moment to moment, no one ever knows what's going to happen next. And that's the thing about Mike Garson. He's a musical master of improvisation.
Was that both in the studio or live?
Both.
Yeah.
And in terms of live work, it's funny because, you know, it makes life exciting stroke difficult for some of those who are working with him, because from night to night, whereas other musicians will trot out exactly the same arrangement.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think David Bowie has given Mike Garson probably more leeway than he's given any other of his musicians for that reason. He actually allows Mike, or has allowed Mike on stage to be a bit unpredictable sometimes.
And that's quite. And so, I mean, Bowie always strikes me as a person who allows artists to experiment, and he's a very highly experimental artist himself. So, presumably, what was their actual relationship? How did they first meet? They've
had a very vibrant creative relationship, and Mike has often told me that he the reason Bowie is his favourite producer as well as musician to work with is the fact that he allows Garson that freedom to be himself, and at the same time guiding and directing him in creative directions. But how they first met is all told in the book, which is Bowie's Piano Man, The Life of Mike Garson, and what the story we were able to tell there, sort of from the horse's mouth, because Mike's given me an exclusive on all this. The book's based on hours and hours of conversation between us, you know, and in fact it was a wonderful turning point in his life. He was a music teacher in New York, and he was in the middle of a music lesson when the phone rang out of the blue, and it was Bowie's then manager Tony DeFries, who Mike Garson had never heard of. In fact, he hadn't heard of Bowie. He was a jazz musician and teacher in New York's avant-garde scene, and was asked, would he be willing to come and audition for this nascent rock star who was just about to take America by storm, and he went for it. 20 minutes later, he'd left the lesson behind, and he was in the audition in Manhattan and never looked back.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So what was the first album they worked on together?
Aladdin Sane.
Oh, that was
the first album where you can hear Mike's piano, and he went on to play on so many other albums in those few years in particular, where Bowie produced 5 albums in 2 or 3 years. So you've got Aladdin Sane, then there was Diamond Dogs, Pin-Ups, Young Americans, and all of those albums have tons of fantastic piano from Mike on there, you know. And then again in later years, in the 90s, Outside would feature Mike. In the 2000s, the album Reality. So he's been a sort of recurring feature of Bowie's albums, actually.
So what was it like for you as a pianist yourself now? And I mean, a really accomplished pianist. We've met before, and you'll be playing for us in a bit as well. What was it like talking to one of your heroes growing up?
It was a fantastic experience. You know, I went to visit Mike Garson in LA. I'd already done one job with Bowie a couple of years earlier, and we kind of bonded over that, and just spoke for hours. And the idea just arose. I just said, I don't think I've ever seen any books about you, although we know there are dozens of biographies of David Bowie. And I said to Mike Garson, you seem like you've had a fascinating life, and I've never seen anything written about you. Have you got a biography about you that I could take home and read? And he said, no, there's never been one, but I think you'd be the perfect person to write it.
Gosh.
And so I thought, what have I talked myself into here?
Yeah.
And here we are, sort of 5 years later, and the book's just come out.
What does he make of it?
He loves it, and in fact, since I came in and saw you, Tim, with Joe a few months ago, it's been causing quite a stir, and things have really taken off. Like, for example, we've had various awards for the book. Classic Pop magazine had its awards issue and named this best book for the year, and we had the same thing in Ireland with Hot Press. So the book's really been starting to cause quite a stir, which Mike especially is happy about, very happy about, because he deserves that.
Yeah. And were there any points that were uncomfortable for him to read or harder to write? That's a good question. He's been very, very open. He's incredibly honest. So, in fact, he was actually the perfect subject for me as a first-time writer and first-time biographer. It couldn't have been better in the sense that there was nothing he wasn't willing to go into. So we actually had some very, very searching discussions. And in fact, he said to me that he wants the book to be based on a dialogue between two pianists. And I don't think he would have given that access to somebody who wasn't a fellow musician or pianist, because he opened up about a lot of the aspects of things like spirituality, creativity, addiction. He's quite rare in the sense that he's never drank or taken drugs throughout his life.
Wow.
And yet he was amongst many people who do. So we've got a whole chapter on the book which explores the topic of addiction amongst musicians, and so there are quite a lot of quite sensitive areas that he was willing to go into.
And it's a great time as well, because with the new album that came out, Bowie's new album came out last year, and also they had that incredible exhibition at the V&A.
Yes,
Bowie is really back, isn't he? He's back and as big as ever, almost.
Absolutely. And what fascinated me is going to places like the V&A and seeing the age range. That people who seem to be into Bowie now really goes from very young to very old, and there are people now in their teens who are big Bowie fans. It just doesn't seem to lose its appeal.
Absolutely. Clifford, should we get you to play something? Is
sure,
that all right?
why
Do you
not?
want to move over towards the piano?
Yeah.
As we have a piano in the studio. All good studios should have one. It's a marvellous grand piano. It takes up the whole place. It's not really true. It's quite a nice upright, actually. But so what are you going to play for us, Clifford?
I'll play 2 or 3 Bowie songs and arrange for the piano by myself.
Perfect.
See what you make of them.
Okay, mate. Thank you so much, Clifford.
That's incredible.
Clifford Slapper,
Thanks very much
that's
indeed.
absolutely beautiful. His book is Bower's Piano Man, The Life of Mike Garson. I've read it. It's an absolutely fantastic book.
We have been treated to some fantastic music just now. I hope that you did hear it. Clifford Slapper, who's a pianist in his own right, has written this incredible book about Bowie's Piano Man, The Life of Mike Garson, which you might want to go and get yourself a copy of that, because do you know, I'm definitely going to read it, because I did come to Bowie late in the 80s. I wasn't cool enough to like him in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
A bit young, obviously.
Yeah.
But it sounds fascinating about the story of, I don't know, well, the pianist really, and the musician's life around all that nonsense as well. Clifford also runs his own live music club where you can hear him play. It's called Slapper's Club.